Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe we'll wait a couple minutes to get things going here. All right, looks like we have a room full here. We can go ahead and get started. I'm Allison, one of the customer success managers here at Zoom Assist. Alongside me today, I have Greg, Bill, and Kathy. And we're going to start off with Greg to show us some updates and what's new here on the web.
Alrighty, thank you, Allison. Let me share my screen. Okay, so first I'm going to show a couple new additions to the production scheduling module. These are still in production. These should go out in our next release, which will likely be later this week or early next week, but I'll give a sneak peek here. So the production scheduling module, currently it's made up of two main tabs. There's a work order tab that is a list of all the work orders in the system. And then there's a scheduling tab, which is used to schedule work orders and operations on work centers. But we'll start here on the work order tab. So again, this is a data table of all the work orders. I'm sorting it here, but I'm going to grab a recently created work order. So we've added a lot more detail to the general tab here. This is now mostly the equivalent of the first tab of woe.e. So it includes all the options that are available from there, including adding recipient work orders to an existing work order. Let's see, I can go ahead and type one in here.
And just while Greg's doing that, for anybody, it's an update to the system. So some of us might not even be familiar with that yet, but we've added some new fields on work orders to be able to indicate what work orders are gonna, a subassembly is gonna go to, so that later we're gonna be able to tie more relational information. So if you're looking at the finished good work order, you'll know you can link to what the status is of a work order that's supposed to supply it. So just kind of FYI there.
Exactly. Thanks, Bill. So yeah, I've just added some recipient work orders to this work order. And then we've also added the routing and scheduling tab, which is the second tab in woe.e. A couple of specific things here. Again, some new recent functionality within the desktop app. We've added the ability to define alternate work centers. Those will be defined in routing.e. So if there were specific work centers that you wanted to allow an operation to be scheduled on, those can be defined, and then you can list the alternate work centers that are available for a given operation here. In combination with that, we've added the ability to have operations in phases. So that's basically a relationship between operations. So there are 3 operations here that are all in phase A. If I were to change to an alternate work center on one operation, it's going to alert me that it's changed those other operations. So it keeps those phased operations together on one work center. I'm going to bail out of this and not save that change, and then we'll hop over to the scheduling tab and I'll kind of show how that works there. So here's our scheduling tab. We're viewing an axis of 8 days at the moment. So as work order operations are scheduled, they will show up in the Gantt chart as these colored blocks. The coloring is indicating the current status of that work order. So these are all release status. And then if I scroll down here, here's that work order we were just looking at, and you'll see the 3 phase A operations here. So a couple new changes that we've made is when you go to drag an item onto the chart, you'll notice that some of these work centers are grayed out. So that's based on that alternate work center setup. So this is only valid to be dropped into these 2 inspection work centers. If I try to drop it somewhere else, I'll get a warning that it's not available. If I drop it onto, oops, I didn't grab it. If I drop it into an available work center, a couple changes here is it will now push out other operations that are conflicting with that. So I dropped it into the schedule, and this is going to change the schedule of this other operation. So we're now giving a little warning that that has happened. And when changes are pending, they are always in this yellow color. So you'll notice that the 3 phased operations that I dropped in here, I only dropped one in, but it pulled the others along, and it also pushed this other item out. So just some improvements to how items are scheduled when they're dropped in, and the ability to do these phased operations. We can go ahead and save that. And you'll notice these items are now in this brown color, which is a work order substatus, which is something I didn't touch on, but that's another recent addition that we've made to the product where you can define dynamic custom substatuses on work orders. So these three operations all have a status of picker printed.
Yeah, just
Anything you want to add there, Bill?
Yeah, just a quick add there is I think our next topic, we wanted to address tariffs this month, but the next topic we're gonna do is go through another kind of 101 production overview. So we'll make sure to hit some of these things a little heavier on the next class. So that'll be the main topic versus just this kind of intro. So perfect.
Okay. That's about all I have to show on the upcoming production scheduling updates. I'm going to drop a link to this page in the chat. This is a list of all of our web modules that are available. So this is kind of an indication of all of the functions in the desktop app and their equivalent action on the web. So if you're ever curious what's available on the web, here's the list. And again, I'll paste that in the chat now. Any questions before I kick it back to Allison? All right. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
Yep, thanks, Greg. Bill, go ahead and jump in and start on the integrating tariffs into quotes and orders.
All right, we're gonna try this. Hit the present button. If you can let me know if it's working or not. We're not seeing a slide yet, right?
Not yet.
No.
All right. Let me go ahead. Okay, now we are.
Yep.
All right, great. Okay, we're gonna just do a really quick, brief kind of intro, and then hand things off to Kathy to show you kind of how it's in the ERP side. So, just some basics here. The different types of tariffs, the purpose of them. Today, when we're talking about in Rover, we're gonna basically focus on the percentage based, as it's the most common in our customer base. It's probably the most frequent questions we've gotten so far about base products. So, just to kind of give you an idea, we're going to be talking about that kind of percentage based tariffs today. Just some, high level, how does this impact manufacturers, distributors? Many ways: costs, margins, customer communication, contractual inventory, supply chain compliance. So we just kind of calling out the obvious kind of multifaceted ways, and I'm sure there are ways that are not listed here that it's affecting different companies that do manufacturing distribution. So given all that, there's enough problems. We're not, we could look at the slide before, but everyone's probably tired of it. Our goal today, our goal really, is to try to reduce some of that friction around incorporating tariffs into your daily operations, because they're probably here to stay, at least for the interim. So we've had a lot of customers reach out, and we wanted to add some functionality to base product for including a tariff surcharge into your quoting and order process if you decided that it's necessary to protect your margins, or just to reflect the changing costs. So I'm going to turn things over to Kathy now and just share the first steps that Kathy has taken and the team in the base product to address tariffs. There's many more potential to come, and I would like to kind of if you can throughout, if you have an urgent need that we aren't addressing through this that you would like to see in the product, would love for you to either put in the chat here. We can even do Q&A later, or email us. So with that, I'll turn things over to Kathy, and yeah, as always, just chat us or email. Okay, stop sharing here, Kathy. So floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Bill.
Yep.
Okay, you can
Yep,
see it.
we can.
So as Bill mentioned, I'm going to show you what we've added into the product so far, and it mainly has to do with the quoting and order entry and ultimately adding a charge to the invoice. But again, as Bill mentioned, there is more to come, so your feedback would be appreciated. So it all starts in the MRK control record, which is probably a control record you're all very familiar with. And we've added these 3 fields in the middle of the screen. And one is for the account number. Yes, I created a GL account number, literally called tariff. And that's the account number that the charges will ultimately get posted against. And then you can define the default tariff percentage that you want applied to the orders or the quotes. And lastly, there is this checkbox, apply tariffs to shipments. So if at some point you decide you suddenly just want to turn everything off, you just come in here and uncheck the box, and then a surcharge will not get added to the invoice for tariffs. So once MRK.control is set up, then we go into parts.e. And we've added these 2 new fields. Again, there's a checkbox to say this part is subject to tariffs, and there is a percentage field. So if you want to charge a percentage for the particular part that differs from what you have in MRK.control, that's when you would make an entry in this field. And then we get into the quotes. So this is a quote that I created in our system for the part number you see on the screen, capped out 13. And let me just do this really quickly. I could type.
So while you're doing that, Kathy, just to kind of, so we're talking about the MRK controls, kind of a global setup, and then we allow the individualized configuration on the parts so that you can kind of override the global, and then further here on the quote itself or on the order itself, it's going to pull in whatever's been configured, but you have the ability to adjust it here per line.
Correct. So after entry of the part number, the percentage that's entered in parts.e will get loaded into the quote. If there is no percentage entered in parts.e, then we pull in the percentage that was entered in MRK.control. And that's the reason you see a different percentage entered for line 1 than you do for line 2. So if we go ahead and we print the quote, that's where you will see a line that has been added to the form to show the total tariff amount that is calculated for the quote. We are not breaking out that amount by line item. We are just simply displaying the total amount for in this case, the quote, but the same rule applies for sales orders. So in this case, it comes out to $300, which means the total of the quote is for $2,300, not $2,000. Now, please remember that when you are doing quotes, if you are using quantity breaks, then a total is not displayed. So then we go into sales order entry, and it basically works the same way as a quote. After entry of the part number, we are loading in the defaults that were entered in parts.e or MRK.control. And like Bill mentioned, you can change this. You can uncheck the box, you can enter a different percentage. If you load in a part that isn't set up to have tariffs apply to it, you can always, for this particular order, check the box.
So it's a lot of, sorry, just to jump in there, Kathy, it's a lot of flexibility. If you don't have everything figured out yet, you could basically handle this order by order at this point if you wanted to.
Correct.
Okay, we got something in the chat here. Can you have tariffs turned on as a rule, but turn it on for specific orders? Glenn, absolutely. So if you, what Kathy's looking at right now in terms of the SO entry, that tariff checkbox is what's going to turn that on for that order. Since it's been defined as a rule, it's going to automatically come in checked. but if you wanted to, you could take it, you could take it off. I'm sorry. The reverse is also, I guess, what you would do, Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, is you would have the box enabled in MRK control, but maybe without a default percentage. Is that how we would handle it if we turn it off?
So in MRK.control, yes, you could delete the percentage if you want. So apologies. Let me
Yeah, I'm
just
sorry.
walk through one more step here really quickly.
I read your question wrong, Glenn, by the way. Sorry, apologies if I threw us off there, but we'll get back to it.
Okay, so, but as Bill was mentioning, in SO.E or even in SO quote.E, once the defaults have been loaded into the record, you have the ability to change them. So if the order was originally set up to charge a tariff, you can turn that function off, or you could turn it on. And then once we get to the shipment part of the process, if the order is set up for tariffs and if this box is checked in MRK.control, then we will add a miscellaneous charge for the tariff amount. Now, this is for the total tariffs that have been applied for all line items. We did not, or at least not yet, I have not added fields to ship.E2 to by line item to display what the percentage is for each line. But I am capturing the information in the ship record. So if you ever needed to figure out exactly how that amount was calculated, we do have a way to do that. You also cannot change an amount that was a miscellaneous charge that was specifically calculated for a tariff. Because when the record is saved, the system will recalculate that amount based on the entries on the line item tab, because the quantities and prices can be changed in the screen. So we are recalculating that for you each time the record is saved. Now, as you've noted, I've probably noticed I have posted this shipment and generated the invoice for it. So if you go into AR.E, so you can bring the invoice up in AR.E, and once it's in AR.E, you can make any changes you want to the invoice the same as you could with any other record. So it's not like you are locked, you are prevented from removing the tariff or changing the amount on the invoice itself. Once the invoice has been created, then you can go into AR.E and you have full control over that record and can do whatever needs to be done. But in MRK.control, again, if this box is not checked, we will still continue to set the defaults on the quotes and the orders, but we will not add that charge for the tariff amount in ship.E2. Somebody could manually do it, but the system will not calculate it for you.
Okay. So to get to Glenn's question that I kind of I got it wrong the first time. So if you don't, we probably need to look at this, Kathy. It's a great question. It sounds like Glenn needs to configure an order to be allowed to do tariffs, but he wants to kind of control it on a specific order basis, with the default being no. You know, we probably could change something, so we could look at that, after before we push this to production forever, but that's an interesting use case. Or is there a way to do that today?
Well, you could, again, you could just simply in SO.E, yeah.
So
if you're going to, I guess the question for Glenn would be, do they plan to update the parts to flag if they don't flag the parts as being subject to tariffs, then nothing will flow automatically into the quotes or the orders. And then within SO.E, they could just select that option for the lines that it should apply to.
Okay.
The other way to handle this would be to add like another option in MRK.control.
Okay. And then Greg, you've got a question. How are tariffs on component or BOM items for an assembly handled? Are they rolled up to the top assembly number? We can follow up with you on the way to add if you're using standard costing to roll up. But we did talk about this, and this is probably going to be a part 2 that we're going to handle on the purchasing and cost side on the landed cost of tariffs to put them into whether it's a miscellaneous cost or if we're going to add a tariff specific cost. More than likely it will be tariff specific, and we'll have a way to roll them up into the finished good through the cost.p1 roll up. Okay. So that's a follow up on our end, and like I said, we'll do a part 2 when we get to that side of the issue. Okay. All right, Kathy. Any other things we need to show, or I know we're going to be a little shorter today than normal. Like I said, we'll probably hit this topic again, but we wanted to make sure we at least addressed it immediately, and then we'll kind of go back to like I said, a production overview is probably the next masterclass. If not, we'll be including more about tariffs if we're adding things to the product. So I don't know, anything else or?
Nope, that's pretty much it
Okay.
for today.
Okay.
So again, welcome your feedback with any, suggestions on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, feel free to email Allison, Kathy, myself, or help at ZoomAssist with any kind of questions here. And then if you need to get some of this functionality enabled in your system, reach out. Like I said, it's in we're in the dev environment right now, but it's pretty close to being able to push this live, and then we can patch that into your account, give you an upgrade or update to be able to use it. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Kathy, Allison, everyone for joining, and we'll leave it there. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.